What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Welcome back to another preview video for the Super Saturday of the Six Nations 2022. This is, of course, where we check on a game of Rugby 22 in the background of the teams that are going to be playing. And then over the top, we talk about the official teams that have been announced that are going to be playing this week, having a look through the entire team list, going over some of the team changes, talking about every player, who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to do badly, and then finally, of course, giving a score prediction for the game. Ireland versus Scotland is certainly a very fun game every year for someone like me who is a bit of a neutral. So let's get this game kicked off and underway. Alrighty, Johnny Sexton will get us kicked off. We'll start off to the left with a bit of wind. I will put a little bit of a caveat in here that I have up this to legend difficulty. This is the first preview video I'm doing it on legendary difficulty. So if this begins to go terribly wrong, that's probably why. So, Ireland versus Scotland. This, like I said in the intro, is a very fun game. One that I really enjoy watching every year. As a Wales supporter, I get to sit there and just watch a really fun game of rugby. I did do a review on this game that happened last year and as to why Ireland just managed to dominate Scotland so much last year in this fixture. But this year is probably building up to be a little bit different. Everything that made Ireland so brilliant last year hasn't quite found the mark this year. Last year, Ireland were all about technicality at the breakdown. Their line-out was superb. Their scrummaging was working well. Those set pieces giving them great platforms to launch from. And this year, we've seen a much different sort of Ireland. A team where they've moved away from some of those different areas. They're doing it in terms of retention of the ball. They're getting the box kicks. They're trying to get them more particularly correctly. Running a bit more with the ball in hand. They're using this dummy runner system an awful lot more. So they've shifted up quite a bit. They've changed almost to be a bit more attacking rather than like a defensive counter-attack style this year. So it's going to be a bit interesting to see how they switch up against this Scotland team. So let's talk about the Ireland team first of all, because they are, of course, the home team. So Ireland last week had a very weird game against England. I mean, this is going to be all props to England going on in that game. England, of course, in that game got a red card. 82 seconds into the game, we saw James Ryan going off, and my fantasy league began to struggle a little bit as soon as he went off. I was like, oh, that's going to be absolutely terrible. And Ireland got to play a 14-man England team for nearly 80 minutes of a game of rugby, which by all means should just be a death sentence for any professional game of rugby. However, again, it felt a bit tough. It felt a bit tough in that game for Ireland to try and make a lot of headway. England certainly responded very well. Jack Nowell going in that scrum somehow added some weight to it, and the Ireland scrum seemed to be in a bit of disarray. A lot of the players weren't attacking that brilliantly. They still weren't managing to find the space. And there was a good 70 minutes of that game where it was genuinely looking like either team could win. And then, of course, just towards that final 5-10 minutes, the fatigue of 14 men begins to kick in, and Ireland began to run away with it. And to be fair, I think the scoreboard's a bit deceiving of how that game ended up. For anyone who was a neutral like myself last week, will have really enjoyed getting down to sit down and watch that game, because it was one of the best games of rugby, certainly in this Six Nations, if not for a long time. It was certainly a great display from both teams to try and get on there. So Ireland will want to tighten up this week. They'll want to make this an awful lot better. Now, playing at home this week will be a huge confidence boost. We did get to see, of course, Ireland versus Wales. That was a much sadder game for me to watch, as we saw Ireland just sort of dominate that game. So I feel like they'll probably be a little bit more confident going into this one, but they've still got to put out a big team. Speaking of which, let's check out the team that has been announced to be playing in this game. Starting off in this front row, Cian Healy comes in on the loose head, so a bit of a switch up there. Dan Sheehan, who's playing very well, to be fair, in that hooker position, retains his shirt, and Tadhg Furlong in that tight head shirt. So this is a good front row. In all honesty, now Scotland, of course, are trying to utilise that scrum a bit more. They've got a couple of bigger boys coming in this year, people like Schoeman that have come into this team. So putting the weight and experience here in, I don't think is a bad move. Both Tadhg Furlong and Cian Healy, a lot of experience, a lot of weight, a lot of power. I think this is working really well. Dan Sheehan offers a slightly different element, more of a technical aspect, but also running ball in hand. I mean, Tadhg Furlong's good with the ball in hand, but Dan Sheehan particularly, we've seen him in these last few games, is more than happy to make metres. For some reason, people don't seem to cover him that well. Not sure why. Maybe because he's a forward rather than a back. People don't seem to think he's going to run. If you let Dan Sheehan run, he will run the length of the field easily. So I think this is a good front row. I think this will work well for them. In terms of the lock departments, Tyke Byrne retains that 4 shirt, and Ian Henderson comes in on that 5 shirt now. Of course, James Ryan going out. We won't be seeing him this week. That did get announced earlier this week. Ian Henderson had a weird game last week. Ian Henderson came in very early for that. I have seen in terms of the fantasy, he still scored really well, but I did think he had quite a lot of penalties against his name. There was definitely a couple of decisions that I think he need to just calm down his game a bit more. Maybe he wasn't ready to be coming on that early and was just trying to make a big impact in the game. But he played very hard for that first 20 minutes, and in doing so, gave away quite a few penalties and quite a few mistakes. Just needed to settle down a bit. Ian Henderson's a very good player. We know this. We've seen this in the past. So no need for him to overplay himself. Just get on with the game and it'll work a lot better for him. In the back row, Keelan Doris moves to the number 6 shirt. Josh van der Flier retains at 7. And Jack Conan coming in that 8 shirt. Now this is, for me, probably the best back row in Ireland of what we've seen so far. Peter O'Mahony's not been playing badly by any means. But Keelan Doris is certainly coming into his own now. Josh van der Flier is more than happy to carry with the ball in hand. Jack Conan as well. In terms of back 3, they're very attacking. So this is a really nice from the back of a scrum. So in all 3 of them can be absolutely launched at this. They're all big ball carriers, all big support runners when it comes to the pick and go. So I think it's good. As a 1 to 8, looking very strong. I think this will work well for them. In terms of the backs then, Johnny Sexton and Jamison Gibson-Park will retain their half-back partnership. I think this is probably a decent move. Johnny Sexton struggled to get going for me in that England game. I don't know what it was. There was a lot of talk around him versus Marcus Smith and how that was going to match up. It really didn't feel like that. It felt a lot more rather than like 2 teams running or 2 captains rather running their own team. It felt a bit more like 2 teams actually playing each other. I don't think it was that much of a head-to-head. Johnny Sexton will want to have probably a bit of a better running game. He felt very basic in that England game, very sort of just based on being a distributor, which isn't what you want to see from Johnny Sexton. He certainly offers quite a lot. The pump passes that we see him do, the dummy passes, he can run himself. We didn't really get to see a lot about, so hopefully we get to see it a bit more in this game. In terms of the centre partnership, we will see, of course, the same partnership. Bundee and Gary Ringrose, the favourite centre partnership that we get to see in this Ireland team throughout not just the Six Nations, but in almost any tournament now. This is what they love, Gary Ringrose, with the ability to find the gaps on the outside and run it round. And Bundee, much more of a crash ball man, but also great usage. When they use him as a dummy runner and they get it right, it looks really good. When you have Gibson-Park pass it out to Johnny Sexton, he does the little fake pass to Bundee, who's running at it like a head of steam. The opponents have to commit at least 2 men just to be able to actually deal with Bundee, and in doing so leave a great amount of room for Gary Ringrose. Now, the Scotland centre partnership has been pretty good so far this tournament, and the defensive work of Chris Harris has been good. Not sure if it will be able to be opened up quite as easily as some of the other teams, so will be interesting to see how those 2 get on there. And then in terms of the back 3, James Lowe retaining that left wing. Mack Hansen comes in on the right wing, and Hugo Keenan will stay on in the full-back shirt. Now, there's a big call here in the fact of Mack Hansen coming in over Andrew Conway. Now, again, Andrew Conway's not on the bench. Could be an injury. I might have missed anything about that. I still don't have internet from moving house, so if there's something's happened along the way, I may well have missed that one out a little bit. Mack Hansen has been in weird forms across the Six Nations. He plays absolutely phenomenally in one game, and then we just don't hear from him in a second game. So hopefully he gets a bit more ball in hand. I do think this is an interesting mix-up. I would maybe like to see Mack Hansen go on the left wing in order to actually cover Darcy Graham. I don't personally know his defensive capabilities that well. We haven't got to see him a great deal international yet. James Lowe is certainly a very physical player, but the one thing I'm a little bit worried about is the Darcy Graham step. I think might be able to get around James Lowe, but at least with Mack Hansen, what you have is that speed. So if Darcy Graham does manage to get around, I feel like Mack Hansen actually probably could catch Darcy Graham. I'm not sure about the defensive element. I'm sure anyone involved with an Irish subscriber probably could tell me whether I'm right or wrong in that, but it'll be complete depends on Hansen's defensive work. But I thought Andrew Conway had a good game, in all honesty. Had a couple of really nice 50-22s against that England team. Really helped Ireland put a bit more pressure on that England team. So I think they'll be missing there a little bit, but I have to assume there was an injury by the fact he's not in the team at all. Really? I don't know. Hugo Keenan, again, had a good game. He could have been in my team of the week. Last week it was between him and Hogg. So, you know, I think it'd be nice to see him cover that backfield. It's going to be interesting to see what both of these teams do in terms of kicking. Both teams are so good on the counter-attack, both with Hog and Keenan. It feels like a weird decision for either team to want to kick it to the other. You feel like retention of the ball may actually be a really good move. To keep the ball away from the likes of Keenan, keep the ball away from the likes of Hog. Hold on to it a little bit more, maybe target your kicking a bit more to find open space rather than just kicking it deep. Little chips over the top, you might be able to find a bit more room. But in terms of the 1 to 15, it's a good looking Ireland team. I think this could work pretty well for them. I certainly think the 1 to 8 is very strong. And I think against a team like Scotland, who also enjoy using their forwards quite a lot during the game, I don't think it's a particularly bad move. As we come towards half-time, I'm playing really badly in the background. Legendary difficulty in Rugby 22 is real tough. So hopefully I can have a slightly better second half. But we will, of course, talk about the Ireland replacement. Starting off in this front row, Rob Herring, Dave Kilcoyne and Finlay Beelum. So, you know, this is, again, the experience in this Ireland front 8 is actually really good. And I think they'll work really well. I think I actually just kicked that kick dead. Yes, I absolutely did as we go into half-time. No, I thought that was a better kick than that. Apparently not. They've got a lot to offer. Again, I feel like Sheehan's been out playing some of the other hookers, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see him stay on for quite a while. Rob Herring is still a very good hooker when he comes on, so I think it'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of those changes. Cian Healy tends not to play a great deal of time, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Dave Kilcoyne come on quite early. Maybe we'll see Tadhg Furlong come off in that 65-70 minute. Dan Sheehan, not sure when he'll come off. I think that'll be an interesting tell whether or not the Scotland scrum is putting pressure on them, or maybe if the line-outs aren't going too well, might be dependent on when we see that hooker change. In terms of the rest of the replacement forwards, Kieran Treadwell, who I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more from. I still haven't got to see him play a great length of time. I'm really looking forward to see that lad open up. I'd really like to see him start. But when you've got some of the players that are in the team, it's very difficult to start ahead of some of them. And then finally, Peter O'Mahony in that 20 shirt, I've already said, you know, I think he's a good player. Will no doubt probably come on in that 6 shirt in that second half. And then the replacement backs, Conan Moe, Joey Carberry and Robbie Henschel. Robbie Henschel, again, didn't really get to see a lot from him last week. Didn't really get to see him make that big impact that we were so used to last year. So hopefully he can find a bit more time in this game. But I think there's a good amount of experience, I would probably say, smattered around in terms of this replacement set. However, I don't know necessarily if it's the strongest team. I mean, Ireland certainly have a good depth in squad, but I think there's potential there for that second half to potentially get away from them. We have seen Ireland try to hang on to as many players as they can do for the full 80. It will be interesting to see how they get on against this Scotland team. Speaking of who, Scotland last week had a real fun game to watch against Italy. Was really tight. And a couple of points I genuinely thought Italy could actually win that game. It just sort of slipped away from them a little bit. Italy got a couple of really decent tries. I think Scotland will be a bit annoyed with their own levels of discipline here and there, but also just their defensive work. The couple of the Italy tries that came felt like they could have been stopped. 2-3 tacklers bouncing off of the man with the ball. They'll want to synergise that defence a little bit more, especially against an Irish team that has high-end runners, people like James Lowe, MACK, HANSEN, KEENAN. If these lads get a bit of steam, you know, Jack Conan, he's having to bring the ball to the line. Keelan, Doris, Josh van der Flier, they're going to run at you. They're going to run hard. So you can't really be afford the missed tackles and stuff. So that, for me, is what Scotland need to work on for this game. So starting out in this front row, Pierre Schoeman, George Turner and Xander Ferguson. This is the front row, of course. We get to see from Scotland now so often. All three doing okay. Again, I feel like the problem here is just getting it not niched down a little bit. I think there's a couple of issues here and there. Pierre Schoeman plays a hard game, but it does mean he gets tired quite early on. Xander Ferguson still giving away quite a few penalties. And we are beginning to see that scrummaging side from Xander Ferguson beginning to slip a little bit. He seems to almost scrum in a different style to everyone else. That, although it seems to be working for him, if it does go down, he seems to be the one getting penalised above most for it. So I think it'll be a tough game for those three in that front row. I think it'll be very telling within the first 10-15 minutes how that scrum is actually going to be performing, to see whether or not Ireland or Scotland's actually managing to hold out in that scrum. In terms of the lock departments, Johnny Gray comes into the side. Nice to see one of the Gray brothers in at some point during this Six Nations. And Grant Gilchrist as the vice-captain in that 5 shirt. Again, Grant Gilchrist could have been in my team of the week last week. I thought he played a really decent game. He's had a really good Six Nations. He's just been in the background so much. He's just doing the hard graft about a lot of things a lot of people don't see. But I think he's been playing really well. So nice to see him still in the side. In terms of the back row, Rory Darge retains that 6 shirt. Hamish Watson in the 7 shirt. And Matt Fagerson in the 8 shirt. So, again, all 3 of these players playing really well. Rory Darge has done so well to come out of nowhere really into the Scotland team and is now just retaining a starting position in this 15. I think he's doing well. I still think he had a better game in his first game than he did last week. Maybe that's because he's playing 6 over 7. I'm not sure where he actually prefers in terms of open side or blind side. But I think he's playing really well. Matt Fagerson, of course, will be running that ball up. I can't wait to just watch Matt Fagerson or Jack Conan run full steam at the other one. I think that's going to be awesome. They're such similar styles players. I think I can't wait to watch that collision. Just 2 massive lads smashing into each other, trying to shut down the other one. Going to be a lot of fun. In terms of the halfback partnership, 1 switch here. Big key switch. Ali Price going to be retaining that 9 shirt. He played well last week. But the big switch of Blair Kinghorn coming on at starting fly half over Finn Russell. What a call that is. What an amazing call that is. I can't believe that's coming in. Now, Blair Kinghorn is a good player. Blair Kinghorn can play fly half, winger, centre, fullback, wherever you want him to go. But Blair Kinghorn is so much more of a standard fly half when I see him play. He really doesn't have the impact on a game from fly half as I see in Finn Russell. Now, Finn Russell, I don't believe, had a good game last week. There was a bits and bobs here and there that impressed me, but for the majority of the game, there were so many kicks he was doing that just felt a bit aimless, a bit pointless, and I imagine that's why he's been moved to the bench. Give someone else that chance, but mainly for the impact that Finn Russell could have in that second half with a wild card later on. Big call there. I'm wondering whether that's going to work against a team like Ireland, who can be quite formulaic in how they play. Having a standard level fly half for me could be a bit of a downside for this Scotland team. In terms of the centre partnership, Sam Johnson and Chris Harris. Sam Johnson I gave a bit of stick for last week because he stole loads of my fantasy points away from me by not letting Kyle Steyn score some tries. But I do think he had a couple of quite selfish moments in that game, just not giving the pass, just not letting someone else do it, needing to take it in himself. There was at least 2 or 3 2-on-1s where he ran into the tackler rather than giving the pass, even though there was loads of space. Just a bit more heads-up rugby is all I want to see from Sam Johnson. Just I think more as a team-based effort rather than a one-man effort. It's the one thing I always think about Sam Johnson. He plays almost like he's on his own rather than part of a team. So hopefully we can see a bit of a change from him there. But Chris Harris, phenomenal last week. Absolutely brilliant. Looking forward to see him playing that same role in this game. And then the back 3 is all going to be the same as what we saw last week. Now this was quite surprising. Kyle Steyn retaining that left wing. Darcy Graham on the right wing and Stuart Hogg in that full-back position. Now Kyle Steyn felt... he had a couple of moments here and there, but in all honesty, he felt quiet. He could have had a couple of passes from Sam Johnson. He could have had that try potentially had Sam Johnson not intercepted the pass and taken it for himself. But other than that, he did feel quiet, and his defensive work was by no means very good, in all honesty. He had a couple of real bad missed tackles that just let Italy get over for some tries. I think Mack Hansen will be licking his lips waiting for Kyle Hansen to potentially be defending him with some of the speed he has. I think that's a big call. I think maybe they could have looked for some different wingers. Of course, Duaman Merv still out with his ban. Not sure about that one again, so I think there's a couple of chinks in the armour here potentially for this Scotland starting 15. And in terms of the replacement, Fraser Brown coming in, Allan Dell, who I do know who Allan Dell is, I just couldn't think of his name last week when I saw him. As soon as he came on the pitch, it completely clicked for me. I knew who it was on about. And WP Nell. Maybe is this arguably a more experienced replacement front 3 than there is starting front 3? Maybe in terms of caps. I don't think that's a bad replacement 3 at all. Sam Skinner and Josh Bayliss are the replacement forwards. Now Josh Bayliss, when I think of his name, I think more of a blindside flanker. So I don't know. That means they might not even have someone to replace the number 8. Maybe we'll see him come on for Rory Darge. Maybe we'll see him come on at number 6 and Rory Darge move to 7. I guess that'll be dependent on how the actual game's going to go. I don't know, we'll see how that one ends up. And then the replacement backs, we've got Ben White in that fly half shirt, Finn Russell in that fly half shirt, Ben White's scrum half, sorry, Finn Russell in that fly half shirt, and then Mark Bennett to cover that centre partnership. Now, by adding Blair Kinghorn in, what it does do is mean that Blair Kinghorn can interchange most positions. You've got Mark Bennett to cover the centre for injuries and Finn Russell to cover fly half if Blair Kinghorn needs to move. So in all honesty, coverage in the back in terms of replacements and depth, very good. I think Scotland have got quite a lot down here. It's just whether or not those replacements are needed for the first 60 minutes of the game and whether Ireland can actually begin to rack up some points, I think will be the decider in this game. So moving towards a score prediction for this game. For anyone who's been watching this game in the background, this has been an awesome game to play on legend difficulty. I don't know how I'm going to be able to win this one. I'm 4 points down, but it's been a really fun game. I might have to move towards doing more legendary games. We've just turned the ball back over here. We'll see if we can try and get away with this one. So in terms of score prediction for the actual game, I am going to lean towards Ireland still. I think there's more chinks potentially in the team for Scotland than there will be for Ireland. If I was Ireland here, I would want to be holding on to the ball for a lot of this game. I'd be avoiding giving it to Darcy Graham, avoiding giving it to Stuart Hogg. I'd be trying to hold on to it and just utilising the penalty. So for me, I'm going to lean towards Ireland, and I'm going to say Ireland to win by 10. Let's go with 10. But of course, guys, I am but one man on the internet talking nonsense about rugby, so make sure you guys do drop down in the comment section your thoughts on the game, who you think's going to win, what you think the score prediction will be. We have already done the one for the Wales-Italy preview. That's already up on the channel. Feel free to go check that one out. And if you've enjoyed this one today, make sure to drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date with all the latest videos as they come out. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.